going to roll the dice for that second list because that second list helps you decide, the universe helps you decide, do you get that travel companion? And the second roll decides um if that travel companion gets their own luggage of $50,000. So write no and yes, yes and no on a 1-2 list uh for yourself, and I'm going to roll that really quickly. Um, okay, so I rolled a 4, which means you get a 2 for that. So you get a 2 for the question of do you get a travel companion? And if you get a travel companion, again, another 4. So that would be a 2. So even numbers, odd numbers, right? So 2-2 for our new friends today. Do you get a travel companion, and does that travel companion get their own briefcase of money? The other clincher I would remind everyone of is you also notice you are 20 years old. You are not the age you are today. If your travel companion is of significant age difference to you, if they are younger, they are automatically 18. If they are older than you, they are of the same age difference to you that they are today. So last week, everyone found out my travel companion is my mother. She is 29 years older than I am. So at 20 years old, she would be 49. So uh, the premise is that one phone number calls your travel companion. So I would be calling my mother and getting her to wake up in this time period, adjusting her to what potentially has happened, and trying to decide where we would utilize transportation services to meet up in this timeline. And what do we do with, obviously we don't have cell phones, uh, you know, making decisions very quickly about trying to figure out a place in 1950, not 1953, not 1949, but 1950, where we could potentially meet up. And that does change a lot. If that travel companion has money as well. If they don't have any money, how are they? You don't have a car, you don't have a bicycle. So if that travel companion doesn't have money, they're on foot. Once you get off the phone call, and you are fully dressed, the life you know starts disappearing. The home you are in is morphing back to what it was in 1950. Even if your home was a home in 1950, you do not legally live there and you must leave without being seen. You are now standing on the street taking in the changes. This is the apartment building that I live in 1950. Tower Press was the best known place to buy a wool suit in the city of Cleveland, right? So doesn't look actually that much different. It's a little more artsy now because it's full of lots of artsy people like myself. Um, the question is, what are your next moves to stay fed with a roof over your head and clothing on your back? How do you stick to the plan you discussed with your travel companion? And this is where we're jumping in today, is how do you utilize the knowledge you have today to help you navigate your first day? How do you stay safe? How do you keep your money safe? Because you're wandering around with the suitcase with 50 grand in it. That 50 grand is close to $650,000 today. So that's a huge amount of money, right? How do you plan on meeting up with person X? And keep in mind, you have no identification, birth certificate, driver's license, no car, no draft card, no proof of employment or education. So what are your first steps to kind of solidify yourself as an actual legal adult in this timeline? What are the unique challenges you might face as a 20-year-old adult in this timeline? Male versus female. You have no family connections. You And then does having person X as your travel companion change your new life and how risky can you be? I would say me as having my mother as my travel companion, we cannot take a lot of risks. My mother is not much of a risk taker, and she would be very unsettled. I know this for a fact because I did this with her. She would be very unsettled by this shift in the timeline, and she would want to do the old Star Trek, find someplace quiet in a quiet corner of the universe and just let things play out. So be thinking about those things as we step into what do you know about your family at this time? Do you try to make contact with them, or do you build a life near them, or do you just avoid that altogether? Um, would you share a little bit of the money that you have? Because keep in mind, in 1950, we're only a few years out of World War II, and things, as we know, will get financially better for many families in the United States. But your families for 20 years have been living through the war years and the Great Depression. Would you try to explain your presence to them, or would that be considered blasphemy? And would they call the FBI on you? Is it safer for you to not connect with them, and what are the risks? Yes, these are pictures of my family members. This is my mom's mom and dad. This is my dad's dad. That's my dad. That's a famous picture of my dad. You know, last week when we did this, we had a lot of people talk about what are the things they want to do with business, what they would invest their money in, uh, how would they grow that 50,000 so that they would never have to work a traditional job, so that the pressure of that traditional job model is off of them, so that they have more fluidness. You know, in 1950, you could still get some very reasonably priced property in places like Malibu and Las Vegas. Or would you try to do those things so it could free you up to do more philanthropic type work? Maybe become a teacher, maybe help with a good cause. You know, in 1950, we don't have things like this last year, we've talked a lot about the Department of Education. That didn't exist in 1950. So there's a lot of school children around the US that are getting not much education. I think that's a lot of slides to kind of jump in and go through. Um, Rodney, what do you think about doing a breakout, some breakout rooms here just to
Yeah,
break
yeah, I
out
think
and get
so.
people talking and talking with each other and thinking about what their steps are?
Yeah, that's perfect. We'll go for about 8 or 9 minutes, guys. I've got them shuffled up here. I'll see you back here shortly. I got you guys as co-hosts. That's why you're not sent out.
You want me anywhere in particular?
uh, doesn't matter to me. I made sure Jim and Joe got in the same room so I could get them introduced.
Oh, good. Good, good. Well
Uh,
played.
so I'll jump to 4 so I can make sure that happens.
All right.
Uh,
Rita, where do you want to be?
I don't know that I have a preference. Do either of you have a preference on where I go?
No.
Maybe I'll just go to room one.
All right. I will join three because they're short.
Perfect.
See you then.
Yeah, I was telling them, I said, in the group I was in, I was like, my mom's only 14 and my dad was 12.
Yeah, mine were 6 and 3
Like, and
at
I
that
definitely
school.
wouldn't walk up to them and give them $10,000 at the age of
No,
12 and 14.
no.
They didn't even know each other at that point.
I felt it'd be a little bit creepy for a 20-year-old approaching a 6 or a 3-year-old, right?
Yeah,
Even in
yeah,
1950, that's a little bit weird. Back to the Future, is that right? Where
yeah, for sure. It's all you, Rita. You're muted. You're muted. We're all broke, by the way.
Ooh, okay. Just gonna share while we're doing this. So I'm actually having a ton of fun learning about all of you. So I really do encourage all of you to kind of share more. Julie shared that her family in Cincinnati uh at that time period and even today makes horseradish and at the time pickles and a variety of other kind of items. I had no idea. Now I want to try some of your products, friend. Uh,
Myers
you
horseradish.
know.
Here, thought you just had a street named after you. You're muted too, but I can hear your, I can see your head going, uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm famous with lots of things, huh? That's all it is. So
So, we've gotten through our first day, we've gotten through our first week. We've probably found our person if we have a person we're traveling with, and we're trying to talk to them and settle in and kind of start getting the newspaper. If you're at a hotel, maybe you get the newspaper every morning and you start figuring out where resources are, you know, uh, obviously there's no rule book for this, right? So what is your new reality? Nothing about this says you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. So, do you take this money and try to grow it and then kind of like live on a beach and take up, surfing? Do you try to build a family there knowing that at any moment you could be snapped out and taken back to 2025? Does that change your decision making? Once you settle in, what are things you would like to do? Because again, you're only 20 years old, you're getting a restart. Do you want to do a different type of schooling that maybe you didn't have money for when you were, in this time younger, that you didn't have resources for? Do you want to live someplace else or move somewhere else? Uh, support a cause, build an empire. How are you called to live in a life without ties, support, or responsibilities to your current life? How does that inform your decisions and happiness in life today? Knowing that you have the energy of a 20-year-old, the wisdom of where you're at today, knowledge, all of us have some knowledge of what's happened in history in the last 100 years. Um, you know, if you were to do things over again in a different timeline, would you do something different? Um, we've talked a lot about, what money and investments, but what relationships do you want to have? Where do you want to live without any ties to anybody? Um, and
I think
how
the
do you feel about that?
I think the hardest thing would be what county official do I bribe so I can get a birth certificate?
Right? Or do you do go to the local cemetery, find an infant that died in 1930 and try to get their birth certificate?
No, I'm
Uh,
not that creepy.
right? But you have to live under that name. Do you try to, I thought about trying to, so, uh, The Higby building in downtown Cleveland also had the Silver Grill, which is a really famous department store restaurant. And it was a known place that you went and had like a nicer lunch. Would I hang out there every day for a couple of weeks and try to get the staff to introduce me to an attorney that might be able to help me? Or doing that, is that going to create some kind of red flag that I might get turned into the authorities to try to get myself solidified as an adult? The goal is kind of identifying what are the things that we aren't getting to experience here because of lack of time, resources, money, family, something here. And just having fun with it a little bit. Did anything happen in the last breakout groups that anyone particularly enjoyed?
We talked about the hula burger.
The hula burger? What's the hula burger?
From what I understood, it was designed to be kind of a companion of the fillet of fish, where um, for people who weren't allowed to eat meat, it was two slices of pineapple and uh, uh, around a slice of cheese on a hamburger bun.
I don't even know where to go with that.
Like not, well, neither did McDonald's. They dropped it after about 3 months. So
And they
I
sold
did
three
recently.
units.
yeah, that would not be for me.
Hey,
I would
Rita,
just I would just say, give me a grilled cheese sandwich with a side order of pineapples.
I would like to have Darcy to share his story.
Go, Darcy.
Yeah, a little bit of the highlights we had talked last week. So I did have a travel companion and I did get the $50,000 in cash. We're both really close here in Cincinnati. We're probably only 7 miles as the crow flies. So we're not figuring travel would be a big problem. We have the knowledge and the understanding of what the golf world will become in Palm Springs, California in 1950. Thank you, Rita, last week for the nudge. And so we're going to set off an adventure. Dan is an engineer and a patent attorney. I can leverage the years that I've spent in business, and we both have a passion and love for golf. Um, Everything was really cool until you threw this thing in about family. So, and would we share anything? My parents would be very, very young, 6 and 3 at the time. Both sets of grandparent, both sets of grand. So the whole thing about a 20-year-old approaching young children probably wouldn't fly. My grandparents were both alive and established. One set was a farmers in very rural North Dakota. So that brings up an interesting twist. Would you talk to them? Interesting thing about travel, though. So the ID really isn't an issue. In 1950, you could get a plane ticket or a train ticket by plopping cash down on a counter. And if you needed the place to stay, same rules applied for renting apartments and even hotel rooms, right? You could just get cash. And then we're going to steal
If
from
you're a man.
Natalie.
If
If
you're
you
a man.
and we talked about that in the room we had Natalie and Pam, and as a male in 1950, I think that's a completely different experience about even the protecting the cash in the suitcase. So as a 6 foot, 220 pound man, I would feel comfortable, right, walking around in that era. So
And as a man in 1950, you would be eligible for the draft.
that's true. That's true. We had a conflict
with the
ahead of us.
Korean War just getting ready to start.
Right.
So it's
I'm
not all
20
peaches
and
and
my
cream being a man.
Yeah,
my
I'm 20 and my partner, my travel companion's 29, right? Because we
my
got to do
my
the
dad
age
would be
calculation.
23 and my godfather would be 22 and I'd be 20 and we'd probably all be heading to Korea.
Right.
If you don't have ID, they wouldn't be able to draft you.
They actually could have. Uh,
Because you're
you could
breathing.
have went in and enlisted without identification back in 1950.
You could do a lot with that ID in 1950. Except if you're a
Yeah.
woman, you couldn't open a bank account. That was the problem we would face.
You couldn't open a bank account, you couldn't rent an apartment, you couldn't buy a house, you couldn't buy a car.
Who
And
now where Rita, I'm just really curious. Is all that true? Because during World War II, you had so many young ladies leaving the countryside, coming into the cities to work in Cleveland, Washington, D.C., Cincinnati, working in the war industries. That's why it's like when we were together, I'm like, this isn't 1850, this is 1950. And
so
the
this is
ladies in the
why there are
workforce was a thing.
So this is why they had things like in Washington, D.C. and New York City, there were a lot of women, even today, that even go to those cities. They had specific buildings that women could move to. The famous one in New York City was the Barbizon,
Mm-hmm.
and it was basically like dormitory type rooms, like little tiny kitchenettes. But, barring spaces that were specifically designed for women, it was considered really weird, even in the 50s, for a woman to live by herself on her own. Maybe if you had a couple girlfriends,
Mhm.
like in my travel companion is my mother, that would have been considered, we could have come up with a story to say my mother's a widow, which is not inaccurate, right? And that would have been a lot easier. But the reality of it was prior to the women's movement of the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, especially if you were someone they did not know, because keep in mind, you don't have family here. No one knows who you are. So, yeah, you might have had to plop down money to buy that great new Chevy or, the fabulous Finns of the 50s with those great cars, right? But they still would have been like, who am I selling this to? Can your father come down and vouch for you?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that absolutely would have happened. And those women that did war work, many of them were married women with husbands away that had families that they had to take care of. Uh, that my mom had uh, she had aunts. One was, I think, a secretary and one was a nurse. But both of them had brothers who could sign for leases and cars and things. So they would have taken Uncle Bub with them to go down and take care of business things. In many chances, in many ways, women had to have people sign for them, especially.
I don't know, Rita. It just sounds so. I had a great aunt who was in the Navy and then the Air Force during World War II and right after, and she wasn't married, right? Now she's in the service. My mom was she was about that age actually, about when was she born? She'd have been about 18 in 1950. And I've just never heard either of them tell these horror stories about they couldn't get around without men vouching for them.
And there was
My
still a
mom's
lot of
still alive. I'm
restaurants.
going to
Okay,
go ask her now because I'm really
we
curious.
we can agree to disagree on that. Just party on.
Yeah.
I, I'm gonna do the same, Andy. I mean, my mom's 90, and she was alive during those times. She had jobs during those times, probably
Or
working at the
even still
five and dime.
restaurants and clubs that wouldn't let you come in if you weren't with a group or traveling with a gentleman companion. It could be your brother or a neighborhood friend or a date or whatever, but there were, like the Copacabana, like they wouldn't let just a woman in.
Yeah. AI's general take on this is a woman without papers. This is straight from them. A
Mm-hmm.
woman without papers might be questioned more harshly as society expected women to be anchored in family structures. Often, from financial independence standpoint, opening a bank account or securing a credit card for was harder for women. Many banks required a husband or father's
Yes.
co-signature.
Well, the credit card thing was out of the question. They didn't exist in 1950. We had that discussion.
It wasn't until the 60s that it was legal for both single and married women to open their own bank accounts. Even then, many financial institutions still refuse to open lines of credit or offer loans to women. They still face discrimination. Women continue to be viewed as incapable of being responsible with money. That's another search. I had relatives with this issue. They needed
Mm.
a man to back them up to do it. My grandmother was in a boarding house, the only place that they would allow her because it was for women back in New Haven.
So I see that Amelia, do you have a question? Yeah, that'd be
Um,
great.
Not a question exactly, but to contribute to the current topic, I had no idea what the papers situation for women was in the 50s. That's why my plan was to go to the nearest church and tell them I lost everything in a fire.
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Art.
I'm pretty heavy in my faith with my mother. I think I would be very surprised at what Catholicism looked like in the 50s. So I would be leaning on her to kind of help me through that. Because as we know, I have a very vibrant and big personality. And I think, she would kind of have to help me work through that a little bit. So Emil, I think that's incredibly smart to kind of utilize your religious faith to kind of help you with that. That's fantastic.
Thank you. I'm also thinking of it in the aspect of people like to be heroes.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. They do like to help people, whether that's um man, woman, single, married, children, right?
Mhm. And in the situation of, I think a lot of my relatives who were alive at the time weren't actually living in Ohio, so they wouldn't be able to help me. And I don't have the traveling companion for this, but churches really were like community hubs. So it would be a good place to go meet people, find resources. And I know the tone of the exercise has been a lot of, okay, like you may have a companion or not, but basically you're on your own. How are you going to do this? I think a first step for me as a woman in the 50s would be making sure I'm not on my own. So the church would be a great place to go for that. Like basically, like insert myself into a community because there are going to be people there who want to help. I am of the faith, so it gives me a connection pretty immediately. And people like to be heroes, and I lost everything in a fire. I have nothing. And it's kind of true that I have nothing in this situation. So
I want to change my companion to Amelia. She sounds smart.
Right?
it's funny that you say that because this
And she's
plan
got and
is,
she's got 50 grand.
it's funny that
Yeah.
you say that because a lot of this plan is built on the fact that I don't know a lot about the 50s. So,
Right. So, and I don't actually think that it could literally be a lot of time periods. It's going to adjust a little, but the sense is that you're supposed to feel like a a foreigner in a foreign land, that kind of
mhm.
feeling. And so we're getting into about 10:45. So I want to break down, part one versus part two. I started this year specifically working on um, areas that were deemed core factors for success in business. And in part one, in session one of this, we get a great sense of it, if immediacy and urgency, having to make, being a strong decision maker, learning from your mistakes, giving yourself the ability to adapt, communication and confidence. And then in part two, as we start settling in and we start thinking about the bigger picture, we start having to decide how much risk we're going to take, how much we're going to adapt, or whether we kind of pull away from society. The grit you have to kind of keep plugging away and keep doing the things, and how much planning we're going to do. And all of those things pull from these core factors of success that we talk about in this meeting, in Cleveland area networking, the things that we need to continually go do the job interview, go meet with the client, go be out there very vibrantly on social media, right? What's the plan? How do we do it? Doing it with huge amounts of confidence, even when on the inside you feel like you're kind of going, oh my God, what am I doing? So, this sort of little snake guy here, um, for me is also something that I remind myself of on a regular basis of, you know, am I learning from my mistakes? Am I sort of forgiving myself when things don't always go right? A couple months ago, I had a job interview that I thought was going to be amazing. I flopped on interview two, friends. Absolutely flopped. So, oh, Okay. Jeff Hexer thinks it looks like a fish hook. Okay. I'm gonna hook him in. I'll take it. Um, and uh, kind of thinking, what am I building on? Or maybe areas where uh some areas I might have really natural talent in, but sometimes people are maybe not good planners, or they're really scared to take risk, or maybe you just don't have enough education to be doing something, and maybe that's something you've got to start seeking that out. Some of these are going to be things that come naturally to you, and I use this as a place of inspiration to go, maybe in this situation, I'm not being risky enough. Maybe I'm not asking for enough. So this was kind of the core areas that you pull from, right? That can you be agile? Can you move? Um, and are you going for it, or are you kind of staying safe, or are you worrying so much that you're not being as vibrant in your spaces that you need to? So, uh, I'd love to keep this conversation going. I really want to hear more about where any one of you wants to take your adventure. If you wished you had received one of your other travel companions. Last week, our friend Ray, who we've seen on here a lot, he was the person, as we know, he's got some pretty young kids. You could tell he was very much thinking about his wife back here with the kids and being able to take care of them. I wished he had been here today because I wanted to ask him the question of does he want to be the proverbial person that built up so much wealth that there's this massive trust fund, so that on December 12th, 2025, someone shows up on her doorstep and is like, here's a trust fund for you and your kids. Here's a massive amount of money. Is he going to be working himself for that? Or is he, going to at some point let himself breathe and have a little fun? I haven't heard much from Kate. Kate, do you want to share anything about your adventure?
I was still trying to figure it out.
Okay.
I hadn't gotten really into the depths of it all. My companion was my husband, so we'd see if we can survive.
Did you get a second luggage of money?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
working with
So
over.
we're in a pretty good shape, but
So you're in a position where you could literally buy a little shack on a coast somewhere and just water paint if you do like a
right.
tiny bit of investment with Walt Disney and Kodak and just chill.
He might invent spreadsheets.
Backing
He
up
might
with your
be the
spouse
Excel.
sounds kind of boring.
Yeah, if you're 20 years old, I saw this great movie a couple years ago. One of the clips was it was three guys who were all skiing and parachuting at the same time. So they would ski off the side of a mountain and parachute for a little bit, and ski a little bit and then parachute a little bit. And maybe I would do that if I were 20 years old.
And maybe live till you were 21.
Maybe. Hey, Jeff Delwitchy in Wisconsin. Who was your travel companion and what's going on? You're on mute.
Sorry. Keeping it simple. My mom and I are doing spring training out in Arizona. It's been on the list for a while now.
Route
Any
66.
bigger plans beyond that?
Nope.
Okay.
Taking lots of baseball. See the desert. I don't know. We're pretty simple people.
You'd be able to travel Route
But again,
66 back then too to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, you could buy
You
a
could buy one of
share of
those.
a bog team.
No interstates.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could be the owner of the Brewers.
Maybe I could be the
Could've taken-
commissioner. Maybe I could somehow buy my way into that.
Could have gotten a share of the Green Bay Packers.
We actually do have a share of the Packers.
Okay.
I want to ask Lamar, you're on mute, but I want to ask you, who was your travel companion and what are you doing?
My travel companion was my brother. And what we were doing is we were using the money to explore the world, to determine what we wanted to do. We were both Army brats. So we lived a lot of different places, lived over in Okinawa for 3 years. And what we were trying to do is figure out our passion. His passion was, quite frankly, was exploring the world. And my passion was teaching. And I think uh, with this, instead of going to West Point and becoming a career officer, I think what I would have done is become a teacher and uh, basically help people to get better at doing their math.
Good.
Rita, with the prompts from last week, I actually had a little bit of free time before the call and used Claude just to do some research about 1950 and different parts. It's interesting what it comes back with and what a different world it was back then compared to what we're living in today. Um, and I think that I was going to comment on one of your slides says, as you're settling in, we don't know how long that we're in the new reality and would it change our decision? And in some respects, so I'm looking at things from a transition standpoint, that's the reality today. And I don't know how long that transition is going to take. So rolling that into present day format, I think you have to, in some cases, you have to go with your gut. You have to use your intuition, but then relying back on your 13 factors of success, there's so many of those bubbles that are reminders for what we have to do going through that process. So I think it kind of pulled it all together with what you just shared.
Thank you so much. You picked up on the bigger message. I think, especially for those of you who are in transition, that this presentation doesn't feel dissimilar to how you're feeling now, whether that's for me searching for clients or for some of you looking for that job, that you sort of feel like the rug's been pulled out from underneath you and you don't quite know what things are going to look like in a month or 6 months or whatever. And it's really good to have that exercise to kind of step out and away from your day to day in the walls that you see to kind of have a slightly different experience and go, well, given a few more of these resources or these different experiences, I could do this. Well, the question then becomes, can you find some way in this reality to give yourself some version of those resources or experiences so that you can be more vibrant? Maybe it is a class at the library. Maybe it is, just giving yourself the pleasure of reading more books on a certain topic that have nothing to do with job searching, right? So and I won't lie, because I have been in some capacity thinking and working on this presentation off and on for a year, ashamedly. And on days that have been really, really difficult, where I did not have a great day, I won't lie, I might take like 20, 30 minutes and just kind of go, what is 1950 Rita working on today? Is she opening some really great furniture boutique in downtown Cleveland while kind of, searching, kind of dating around and meeting some different guys and maybe getting married? Is she living in a little shack on the coast of France, water painting? And just having that moment, I can go, if she can be doing multiple different things, maybe I can too. And it's okay that today wasn't very good, but tomorrow has endless possibility. And it does keep me from being as stressed out. What was that, Joe?
The famous line, tomorrow is another day.
Right. I just don't want to do one more call out because I haven't heard much. Not to put you on the spot, but friend Jim, I haven't heard much from you. Did you get a travel companion? And what are you doing in your new reality?
I did not get a travel companion, and my approach is kind of similar to the approach I'm taking in my job search, which is one day at a time. So for the first day, I think I'm gonna find myself a diner, get some good breakfast, pick up a newspaper and see what's going on, and maybe take a hotel for the night or for a week or something, so I at least know that I have shelter. Um, but yeah, I'm probably the kind of guy who's gonna have a meal, go back to my hotel room, and lay on the bed for a couple hours and think, how the heck did I get here?
Yes. Yes.
Where is this going?
It's like the old Peter Frampton song, "Whose wine, what wine, where the hell did I dine?"
And
How did I get here?
what am I like
Yeah.
even the question of, do I do anything? Do because I don't know if this is going to end tomorrow. I don't know if this is going to end 50 years from now. So, you know, um, do I invest all that money in Kodak or something like that? Well, I don't know. Even, what happens if I invest all that money in Kodak and I come back, but I don't, when I get back to present day, I don't have any of those returns. It was all a dream or something like that. Does it matter? I don't know. Maybe I should have done something fun when I had those 10 days in the past,
Well,
and lived it
if you
up.
invested all in Kodak, you better come back before about 2000. That's about when they went bankrupt, I think. So.
Right.
So, it is something like, rather than a Xerox or a Kodak, that kind of, do you pick something that we know of today? There was no Apple or Microsoft to invest then, but you could easily invest in Walt Disney.
IBM or General Electric.
Right. So, you know, it's fun to kind of play that game, to kind of think, because it does give you a sense of how quick you are to make decisions, and also, my dad was also one that was like, you don't, at 18, how do you know what you want to do for the rest of your life? It's okay to pick something and then pivot. And I think even as adults, like you said, you would need a little time to just kind of like lay there and be like, what's going on? Well, I also think it's okay to be like, move out to California. Maybe it's not your vibe, and move on to something else. There's nothing that says 5 years in Malibu, 5 years in Las Vegas, 5 years in Paris. There's no rules, right? Because you have a lot of, and you don't have to invest all the money. You could invest half of it and you'd still have a ton of money to have a lot of fun. I don't know if we have any gamblers or poker players in the room, but you might be able to make some pretty decent dough in Vegas. I wouldn't. I'm like a penny slot gal when I go out there. So
I could bet a lot of money on Secretariat. Secretariat has a very good birthday, mine.
Secretariat was favored to win, though, wasn't he? He was kind of known to be amazing, right? Go for an underdog with better odds.
I got fit well. I mean,
More
I
favorable odds.
could have bet on the horses that I know would finish second.
Yeah.
Even by 30 lengths. But Secretariat was born March 30th, 1970.
Does anybody remember the movie Ages of Adeline?
Yes.
Yeah.
This made me think of this right away. And then the other issue was going to the Catholic Church, in the old movie Going My Way with Bing Crosby, which I think was like in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
A young woman was at the church and she was down on her luck, and so the priests were helping her out. And I instantly thought of that movie too. So all my plans were by movies.
Well, I mean, even as developing this, there's aspects of this that come straight from Star Trek guys, legitimately, because they would occasionally go back in time and they weren't sure what they did to go back in time would get them forward in time. And does that going forward in time get them going right where they need to be? Do you even want to try to go forward, or would you end up 900 years beyond where you would normally be? So, it's just a fun opportunity to kind of step back and go, one or two small things can make a huge difference. And I think especially when you're in transition and you have to keep your mindset really very, I think, very vibrant at a time when it's very easy to feel very, very down and very dull, that I think going through exercises like this and having fun with it really does help keep you vibrant, and it makes you realize one or two small things can make a huge difference. And you're going to have days that those one or two small things don't happen, but in the meantime, you have to remember those things are out there for you, and that you are on a path to finding them, and you have to have really strong belief in that. And this allows you to have fun and kind of play with that.
Hey, give it up for Rita, guys. It's 11:02. We're already overboard for today, but it was a great exercise. I had such a fun time learning a little bit more about the city that I live in today that I didn't grow up in and stuff, but as well, getting a chance to learn so much more about all of you guys over the last couple of weeks has been crazy. Real quick, Dan, are you there?
Oh, yes. Hey, Rodney.
Yeah, tell us who you are, what you're looking for, how we can help you, man.
Sure. Yeah. So Dan Roseman, I'm out of Milford, Ohio, so Cincinnati area. Was connected to Rodney through Kate Cassis. Rodney and I are both Navy vets. I'm doing management consulting right now and kind of dipping my toe in the water just with some restructurings at the company of looking at what else is out there. So looking to just connect with some individuals and start networking some more. But yeah, great to be with you all today, and nice to meet those that I did get to meet today.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Jim, I wanted to make sure you and Joe got connected too, man. I put you in that first breakout room. Joe, we were talking about applicant tracking system and stuff yesterday, and I know you've got a little bit of knowledge and understanding of that. If you can connect with Jim as well. Amy, were you looking to hear more about that as well? I know I connected you to Greg Butler, but yeah.
Yes, please.
Amelia, as well, Joe. If you need introductions, let me know. I can make that happen on LinkedIn. Guys, what a great week! I appreciate you guys joining us, man. Andy, always good to see you again as well, brother. I want to hear how things are going. At some point, we can jump on a call, hopefully one-on-one. Next week, guys, we got Christmas Chaos. It is our last week of Coffee Connect for the year. There will be prizes and gifts and fun and lots of laughter to be had next week. And then we will come back the first of the year on 6th January, where we are going to talk about referral economics and why, right, getting people to say, you need to meet Amy is important, right? And then the second week, which is the 13th, we're actually going to put all the theory from week 1 of referral economics into practice in understanding how we can formulate the sentences in our own words to talk about who we want to be referred to, right? Go out there, have a great week, everybody. Remember, I love you guys, all right? Be safe, stay warm.
Thank you, friends. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rita.
Thanks. We'll
Happy
see you.
holidays.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great